And we are live with Kayla Svedin. Did I say your name right?
Yeah.
Did I get it right? All right, good. Who originally was from Spokane, Washington. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Yes, we did. And if you guys are wondering why I'm being specific with my words here, is I am terrible with names and I am terrible with getting local context right sometimes in terms of names. So Kayla came to my attention online on Twitter from friends because she was having an epic Twitter battle about school choice. And it was interesting for me to see because it's the same epic battle for school choice that I have all the time. Not all the time, but I have often, which is speaking to people who themselves have been beneficiaries of school choice, who now are against school choice in terms of policy for other folks. And there's a clear difference between Americans when it comes to school choice. There are those that use it, which is almost everybody who has any type of resource or resources. And then there are those who use it and deny it to other people who don't have the same leg up in life that they have to be able to have school choice. So I'm glad to speak with someone this morning who who's in one group, which is the group that knows that we need it, knows that you use it, probably uses it for her own family like I do for mine, although it's not always working out for me. But also wants to fight for you to have it for your kids. So I think it's an interesting discussion. Kayla, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So first of all, it's kind of a special day today. When we first talked about doing this, something hadn't happened yet. There was a shoe that hadn't dropped yet, but now a shoe has dropped. What is that shoe that dropped for school choice people?
Yeah, the Supreme Court decision, Blaine Amendment is no more.
Now, for people listening and watching, Blaine Amendment was what?
So it prevented, some states were using it to prevent public voucher money to pay for parochial education. And that was the case in, it was Montana, I believe she was coming from. And so took it up to the Supreme Court, and they ruled that, you know, if it's being used to educate that child, if the state is allowing public money to subsidize private education, that they can't discriminate and say no just because a school might be religious. So
that they can't get the public money to school specifically. Yeah. So it's basically religious discrimination at the end of the day. You know, the Blaine Amendment for many people who believe in school choice is really important because it was the firewall against being able to have families have some of their public education money go to helping them to go to a school of their choice if that school happened to be religious. But it's also significant in that it does trace back to the time when anti-school choice was really growing and becoming fervent, and it was anti-Catholic. It was specifically aimed at discriminating against a group of people. Oftentimes when we say that families are being discriminated against in school choice, people think we're kind of, you know, making a clever argument, but it's really not. No, the genesis of being against school choice was being against Catholics, immigrants, religious people, and wanting to put them into one system so that they could not have their own spaces and grow the way that they want to. So are you really happy about this? Did you like do the thing? Like, did you do a little dance or anything? Did you think like, oh my God, you know, it's all over it now?
So I mean, I had a bunch of notifications, obviously, like people tweeting about it all over. And we have a couple side group chats with some of the ESA moms here. And, you know, in Arizona, we've been able to use, you know, we have a lot of programs in Arizona, like STOs, you know, tax credits.
Help us with the terminology.
Oh, now I'm drawing a blank. I don't use an STO, but I have one of the moms. It's basically a tax credit that you can use when you pay for private tuition, you get a tax credit on that. So, and that's like a certain amount and whatever. So it's one of the school choice options we have in Arizona. I use the Empowerment Scholarship account for my children, which primarily serves special needs kids, but there are other qualifying categories like being assigned to a failing school, Native American children that live on the reservations, active military families, children that have been adopted out of foster care. And we've been able to use, generally, those monies can be used at private and religious institutions as well. So we haven't had those issues specifically in Arizona, but it's awesome. It kind of, gives us more like, hey, look, not only is this okay, like it's constitutional. Like you can't say we can't use these monies. You can't make the argument anymore. I mean, people can, they're going to try, but I mean, it's been ruled on. So it's very awesome.
Has this been something that you've always been in favor of and always have fought for, or did you have some sort of situation in life that made you want to know more about it and be more into school choice?
I hadn't thought much about it before. My oldest daughter is only 8.5, and she started kindergarten early. She missed the age cutoff by about 8 weeks, but we had her evaluated at a couple different schools because we figured she was ready academically, and she passed their tests, and so we started kindergarten early, and then by first grade we were doing some IEP meetings for some speech issues that she had, and then some other like discrepancies kind of came up, and where she was really far ahead of the class in some areas, but she was really struggling in other areas, and the school solution was to offer to hold her back. And I was like, but why? Like, she's the youngest in the class and she's the age of the incoming first graders, but she's reading ahead of all of these kids that are a year older than her. She's doing math ahead of them and stuff. So all of this, is more of a behavioral thing. You're like, oh, well, she's not emotionally ready to be in this grade. And I was like, well, is that reason enough to hold her back? And we didn't. We moved her into the second grade and got a lot more support from her second grade teacher, who was amazing. And we really liked the school just generally, but it just became more apparent through that year that she needed some more flexibility with her education, and she needed more on-hand stuff that she wasn't going to be able to get in the classroom. And I heard about the Empowerment Scholarship Account program in Arizona from a friend who had placed her son in it the year before, and he qualified through his IEP. And so we looked at that, and I was like, with this, we'd be able to educate her at home and let her learn on her own, because she was already like at home. She was teaching herself Chinese. She was doing math on the computer and like at a grade ahead, and reading all these crazy things, and she was teaching herself sign language at one point, and she was very autodidactic and very inquisitive, very just loved learning, and she had a really hard time with standard school. Sit in your chair, write your story, finish these math questions in 90 seconds. One of her issues is dysgraphia. Like, she has a really hard time with writing things out. She'll draw you all the pictures in the world, but you ask her to write 2 sentences about it, and it's like meltdown, because she has this like short that just can't get what she wants down through her hand and onto the page. And so they weren't moving her ahead in math because she couldn't finish a 90-second timed quiz on math facts, and she couldn't do her homework at home. And we'd have these epic meltdowns about it. And then as soon as she'd calm down, she wanted to get on the computer and play her math game. So I'm like, it's not that she hates math. It's that she has this.
She just hates you. Yeah. That's cool. She hates you. Not that she hates math.
She loved math. And I'm like, and the school wouldn't even use the words dyslexia or dysgraphia. Like,
and is that because there's more money associated with providing service?
No, there's not actually a big bump for those
Yeah.
things. But they didn't want to have to offer anything extra. Like the only actual service she was ever getting was speech therapy, and that was 90 minutes a month. Um,
Mm.
so, it was difficult to get them to see the problems. Um, but her teacher really helped, advocate for her with me. That was very fortunate. A lot of times, I've heard from a lot of parents that, the teacher is kind of on the other side of the table with the rest of the administration when you're trying to advocate for your kids and get the services they need. So when we got the ESA program, we were able to get 90% of her state allocated per pupil funding. The school gets to keep all the federal, any local money, whatever, as though she were still there. I get 90%, 10% goes to the general fund to help run the program. Um, and it comes in quarterly disbursements. And I'm restricted, very restricted on what specifically we can use it for. I can buy curricula, I can buy books, learning aids, I can pay for her therapies, and I can pay for private instruction, which this next year I'm actually hiring a private teacher along with another mom, and our two daughters will do homeschool together with this private teacher. And then every quarter we have to go through a very, very rigorous accounting of everything we've spent. I have to account for every penny, literally every penny, because if it's 1 penny off, they reject your report. So you can rectify it.
It's not really like a free for all. It's not like someone just giving you money and saying, "Hey, there's no accountability. Just run and take this and use it."
I mean,
So
we have
listen, your story right now is the setup to what I think is the setup to many school choice stories, which is you're a parent, you have somebody that you love and you care about quite a bit. They have an issue with the schools. You are being the person who has to live with and love and hold and attend to that person every day as the person in the world that God gave this child above everybody else, who will tune in to what's wrong for you and what's right for you and help you and whatever. So then you have to fight with people outside of yourselves to get the things that you know for a fact you need. You're not making it up. You're not like some kind of, irrational person. You're totally rational. You're looking in the face of a person every day who you love, who has things you need. You need to get them clothes. You need to get them food. You need to make sure they make medical appointments. You need to make sure that when they're having an issue that, they understand what the issue is and all of that. And then you have to defend your decision to people you don't even know, who are random, who don't know your child, don't know your family.
over and
Feels
over.
like kind of a ridiculous premise in some ways. It's a rhetorical question, but isn't it like a little bit ridiculous to have to argue with people about what's best for my family or your family or, the person down the street?
Yeah, I'm like, I never realized like how much for like standing up for this. I never realized how much I would be demanded to prove my child's needs,
Mm.
like to somehow qualify everything that I have fought for her. Like I have to qualify myself, I have to qualify my education, I have to qualify her needs and her disabilities. And I'm like, this is absolutely no one's business.
Hmm.
Like nothing that I have done for her negatively impacts the education of any other child.
Well, and that's okay. Boom, boom, bingo. Now you're hitting the part where that starts fights. Like the one that I keyed in on. You're on Twitter having a normal discussion with people about school choice, and you're having it with people who have no business telling my family or our families what we should be doing with our kids, especially given what we're trying to do for our kids. But they tag in other people. So here come, and I'm just going to be real in this podcast, this broadcast, whatever this is. I'm going to be real every morning and just say what needs to be said in some cases. So a common tactic is, if I am white and I am disagreeing with you, on policy matters like something like this, I don't feel empowered to keep, well, first of all, for some people, yes, I do feel empowered to keep fighting you and telling you that you're wrong and I need to educate you and that you don't know everything about everything and that you need to understand the common good. You need to understand the public good and the common good.
Yes.
And, education is a public good, except for it's not literally
not.
by economic terms, which is where that term comes from. It's not a public good, but let's just keep saying it. When that doesn't work, they eventually tag in a Black person. And it's always the worst Black people that they tag into because they often, God bless their hearts, always tag in somebody who themselves are using school choice in some way, shape, or form, which is exactly what I recognize in your situation. Bingo, they tag in two people. Maybe I won't name names this morning. Who knows? Two people. I know both of them. Both are either private school alumni or private school parents. And they're going to argue with you from a Black position of how it's not good. We need public institutions. We need strong public institutions.
They didn't even argue with me. For so long, they wanted to completely ignore that I was even in the conversation. Like they would not address me until I like made them. Because I'm like, because I didn't fit the narrative they wanted to push.
Yeah.
They wanted to argue with, these white guys that are, obviously, apparently they must be segregationists. Like, I mean, and I'm like, no, they're not. And school choice is not. And I'm here and I'm saying that school choice benefits my kids and all parents should have the choice. If you want to choose to continue to go to your neighborhood school, great, fantastic. I'm so glad it works for you.
Absolutely. If you want to send your kid to any jacked up school in America, I fight for your right. I am here for you. Be here for me. Be here for me. You want to go, listen, if you want to send your kids to a starter prison where no one can read and all the teachers are getting pensions on and drinking the tears of your children, I say go for it. I'm going to help you because what I want is a world in which you say the same to me. Like, hey, Chris, I don't like that religious school or that whatever school it is, but I'm going to fight for your right to have it. Yeah. You did blow up kind of the spot, though, right? Because it's white folks talking about what's best for us. Mm-hmm. And then they tag into educated people of color. One's a person of color, one's a Black person, one's Blackish, I guess. And they bring them both in and they start hammering on them, on the school choice people. But then here you come along, you're somebody who's using school choice, you're educated, you're smart, you can hold your own. And they really wanted no part of that fight, which tells us how counterfeit some of this anti-school choice debate is. Your group is called Empower Families. What are we doing for families to be in that discussion more and to tell their own pitch, to give their own pitch and to fight their own fights?
Yeah, I mean, I started Empowered Arizona Families after the Department of Education in Arizona leaked the private information of over 7,000 families to our primary anti-choice lobby and to news publications. And then we had no recourse. We still are being told we have no private right of action. In fact, they are, we took it to the Attorney General as a FERPA violation. And they said, well, technically, we're not providing your children's education. So technically, we're not bound by FERPA.
Wow.
Goes, oh, that sounds legit.
Wow. Really?
So we've got private information, names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses. If your child has an IEP diagnosis, it doesn't give the child's name, but it gives their IEP diagnoses. So if a family only has one kid, you've identified that kid and what their medical diagnosis is. And this whole list of information is in the hands of an organization that was created to oppose our program. And they put forth an initiative that thankfully died this spring that would have crippled our school choice program. And through all of this, I mean, huge news story was all over the news about this data breach, this data leak and everything. And none of the news stories would talk to any ESA families. Like we literally had no voice. And I'm calling in our local NPR station. I'm sending op-eds to newspapers, and like no one is touching it with me. They want to talk to the leader of this anti-choice group because they're, media dolls in Arizona, and no one's asking them. So you have all this information you shouldn't have. Have you destroyed it like an ethical person should? No, they didn't. And no one asked them that. And no one's talking to us. And so I just felt like the ESA families in Arizona needed a voice, a public entity that was going to grow and become loud enough to where we weren't ignorable anymore. I don't handle being ignored well. So
that's probably a good thing. That means you're in the right situation. That's a pretty disgusting story. I mean, as a parent, you want your privacy. You want to just be like doing what you want for your kids. Then when you become an activist, you want to just do the right thing for yourself and for other families, but you don't want to necessarily be, attacked like you're a politician running for office or something. Here's the story. 7,000 school choice students had personal data leaked by State Department of Education. This is your government. This is somebody in your government who doesn't like what some of you like in terms of policy. So they leak your personal information. I don't know if you said this or not, so I'm not sure if this is true, if they leak it directly to opponents of school choice, or if it just somehow ends up in the hands of school choice people, anti-school choice people.
Yeah, so it was the original FOIA request for the information came directly from a random volunteer of this anti-choice organization who has been best friends with the spokesperson of this organization for years. So, and the person in the department who is helping administer our program just happened to grow up in the same tiny town in Arizona with the person who made the request. So there's just like a ton of things that just make you go, there's no way that was an accident. Mm-hmm. There's no way. And the way that it was provided, they had requested the account balances, which is public information because they're public dollars, but none of the personal information attached to those account balances should have been given. And instead of redacting that information and saving it as a PDF or printing it off and giving it hard copy, they blacked out the Excel cells and then sent the raw file. So all you had to do is highlight. I mean, I learned that you could highlight the text behind a blacked out cell in Excel. I learned that back in like 99. Like that's not
Kayla,
something
damn, you got skills, Kayla.
It's like, you just color over it. Yeah. Like the text is still there.
Yeah, I didn't know
and
that.
So as soon as they got that person tipped off to reporters and was like, hey, make this request with the department. You'll get this information. And they did.
This is one of the things I don't think that we talk often enough about is that if anybody's listening or watching this and really does want to be an advocate or an activist or somebody who stands up for the rights of families to choose who, what, when, where, and how their kids learn, like who they learn from, where they learn it, how they learn it, what it is, which is just be a fundamental right that we should just all just like agree to if we're parents and even for people who are parent supporting. But what you're not prepared for oftentimes, what you and I often, I don't know if we do the best job of preparing other people for when we invite them to meetings or get them ready for stuff, is just how really nasty it honestly can get. Because I think sometimes we're shocked at how nasty middle-class people who sit up all day long thinking about how they can organize against us having a right that we feel is germane to our family, like to our freedom. So the story you just told is nasty, ugly, and unfortunately kind of common. Happens in other places, right? And I'm going to say it again on this show because I love to just keep beating people over the head with these stories so that they don't go away. Washington State, there was your home state. There was a situation years ago where there was a local advocate, a mom who fights against school choice, against TFA, against charter schools. She reads the whole Diane Ravitch thing. She has a blog that all the other women like her in North Seattle read. All the little North Seattle moms with their $1 million homes and whatnot sit around and organize around what they're going to stop other people from having, which basically amounts to, having choice and having good opportunities to a good education. So TFA is coming into the state, and she finds and she does some detective work. She gets all the addresses to all of the incoming TFA teachers into the state of Washington State, and she publishes them all. Of which she includes ones that have protective orders of protection in place. Are included in that list. 2 of them have their homes broken into the next day. And it becomes a big, ugly, nasty thing for young people who just wanted to come into teaching and teach and, help kids through an American AmeriCorps type program. And that's what you get for trying to do something good like that. No one ever tells those stories, though. And it's the reason why you and I think, have to fight so hard and keep fighting so hard. I love the way that you just jumped into the middle of that thread and you had no fear and you just stood your ground and you just said your thing. Because, it pays you back sometimes in negatives. It comes back on you. Why are you fearless about this? Why are you okay with just jumping in and not caring who you're talking to about it?
I think about what would happen if I didn't have the choice. What would my daughter be like right now? Like, she would hate school. The only reason we lasted that last year in her school was because of her teacher. And you don't get teachers like that all the time. And I, could just see the light going out of her eyes for learning. Like, she went from just loving to figure things out on her own. Towards the end of that year, she thought she was stupid, and it broke my heart because she wasn't. She's brilliant. And she's finally getting back in. This last year was just a lot of healing for her and learning that it was okay to not know things and to go find out, It's like, well, you don't know that. So go look it up, go figure it out, find out how this works, do the hard things. And she's finally getting back into being comfortable doing that now. And if I didn't fight for these kind of things, where would she even be? And there are a lot of moms that aren't like me, that can't speak candidly, that can't, that don't want to get up in front of people. And I've never had a problem getting up in front of people. So, I use that to my advantage. And I try to use that to other people's advantage when I can. Because I think everyone should have the choice.
What'd you get out of that exchange that you had? And people in the comments are telling me names. So here's names. On one, one of the people that got tagged in is Andre Perry, who is a failed charter school leader who ran schools in New Orleans that went bust because they were terrible, and became anti-reform after that. But while he was anti-reform, put his own child into one of New Orleans's most exclusive, or actually most well-known private schools that you hide your kids at in Uptown when you have means and you want to be seen. The other person was Julian Helig Vasquez, who's in line to become the commissioner of education in Kentucky, possibly, is being talked of in that way. And is a guy whose dad was a Black professor, mom was not a Black professor, and they put him into a private school for high school. I looked up the school. It's got like 4, 5, 6, 7% Black people in the school. Everybody, I looked on LinkedIn, everybody's doing real well in life, and he did pretty well himself. He went to China right after high school and came back. He's won awards. He's Dr. Helig Vasquez and blah 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 blah. So it obviously worked out for Dr. Perry, who grew up with a single mom in Pittsburgh and became Dr. Perry, which is an achievement that all Black people should applaud. And it obviously worked out for Dr. Helig Vasquez, who has achieved 60 some references and citations, has been peer reviewed millions of times, and has done peer review himself. And his chair of his PhD was Linda Darling Hammond. His best friend is Diane Ravitch. So obviously private school did pretty well for him too. Oh, and don't let me mention Diane Ravitch was a rabid private schooler. Like all of her kids had nothing to do with public school. She didn't become a lover of public school until her kids were safely into the privileged life post school. And then here you come along, jumping into the program, jumping into the mix. I bring that out because I think it's important to point out the hypocrisy in people. I haven't had almost anyone who really needs school choice argue with me about why they need it. I've had lots of people who are using it currently or have used it who become the biggest supporters of not allowing families to have school choice. So anyways, I had to name names because people in the comments are saying, just go ahead and name names. Do you buy any of their arguments, though? Do you listen to their arguments? Do you try to understand where they're coming from when they think that what you represent actually is destroying public education in schools and school districts for others?
So when I really got into all of this, my dad in Vegas he served in his state House of Representatives in Nevada. He was an assemblyman, and he's a Democrat. And I've always been independent, but and him and I don't agree on a lot of things, but we can have a lot, like, really good civil conversations. And so I called him one day and I was like, "Look, Dad, I don't understand why school choice is such a party line issue. Like, why are Democrats just so rabidly against it? Because it doesn't make sense, because it benefits the people who are like their base. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Can you explain this to me? Because I'm trying to connect with these people, that are in these failing districts and these poor neighborhoods, which when I was born in Vegas, and when I started school, I lived there until I was about 10. I've lived in the actual projects. And, when I started school and went to my assigned kindergarten, it was a terrible school.
Mm-hmm.
And, going through all of this with my kids, like, I realized that I am a beneficiary of school choice because my mom was able to get a zone variance. I mean, I don't know how many districts do zone variances anymore.
What's the zone variance?
So in districts where you don't have open enrollment, because open enrollment is one of the basic, school choice, options. If you can get there, you can go there. But as with in Las Vegas at the time, in the very early 90s, you couldn't just go to another school. You had to get permission, and that was called a zone variance, and they were very difficult to obtain. And the only reason I did was because, I have relatives that worked in the school district. And so I got a zone variance. My mom got me a zone variance to go to a much better school in a much more affluent part of town that was pretty much like subsidized by the people that had their kids attending there, that were so just like lots of parent involvement and extra money given by that community to prop that school even more. And I was able to do that, but I'm like, school choice, access to that shouldn't depend on nepotism. Like, it shouldn't be just who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked him, I'm like, if there are mechanisms that allow kids that grew up where, I started out, and gives them options and opportunity to access other than, not just like, to go to an elite private school, but just other options than their poor, failing public school. Why are people against that? And he couldn't really give that like a good answer. I haven't gotten a really good answer from anybody. I don't understand. I don't think
it's clear.
that it really doesn't doesn't
pull away
have a
the
good answer.
Well, it does. I mean, it's got a practical answer just in my mind. It's got a practical answer just being on the inside, um, running for office and seeing who you have to talk to when you run for office or whatnot, teachers unions. So
Yeah.
Democrats and Republicans, of which I'm neither, but they both have their weird relationships to these policy issues. But for the Democrats on their side, they have all these different constituencies that they have to answer to. People of color are one constituency, but the way that they get rid of our best interest is by buying off our leaders and turning our leaders into robots and making them comply. So we don't have any leadership on our end who are going to fight for us to have what we want. We have a bunch of ambitious people who want to continue going from school board member to city council member to state representative, possibly to Congress one day, hopefully to the Senate in some strange aberration of history that we might get more than 3 senators at some point, So, but they can't do that with labor. They can't do that with the teachers unions and the others unions who absolutely positively have very cartelish behavior and have no idea that they're actually, I shouldn't say they don't have an idea that they're obstructing our best interests. They know it. But they're making a calculated bet that what's best for all workers that they represent, get dues from, is more important than us having these choices. And Democrats have to go with that.
Yeah.
They get more money that way. They get more, it's practical, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There is a practical reality. The thing for people of color is they actually have to make enough noise within the Democratic Party to stop that mess. They have to actually interrupt it. But I don't expect the leaders, people who are elected already within the party, whose bread and butter is already buttered with labor money, to be the ones who are going to be champions for us in any way, shape, or form. As a former elected official myself, I can just tell you, it's a pretty just straightforward game internally.
Yeah.
And for people of color, oftentimes, elected people of color, you have to say, I feel like I'm doing positive things on all these other things that are really important. So that if I have to take a back seat on this school choice thing, I'm still doing the majority good for my people and getting stuff done for them. That's the kind of rationale. And also, hey, maybe Kayla, maybe you're wrong. Maybe schools just need more money. Maybe they just need more money. Maybe that school, you took your daughter out of that school, but what if that school just needed more money and needed more support? And by you leaving and taking your smart self away from a school that needed you to be there, you actually stole from that school a resource that they needed to become better.
I mein, kids are not cash cattle.
Oof.
They're not. And
are you sure?
It's just.
Are you sure?
Well, and like I've said it a bunch of times. I really liked the school she was in. We were really excited for her to be there. It was a great school. We still have friends that have kids at that school there. I love their model. It didn't work for my kid, and that's not their fault. It's not my fault. It's no one's fault. But neither should we be forced to be stuck there just because.
Not just because it would make life better for the public good, or you don't. How do you feel about the arguments around the money, though? It is too many people who are against school choice, like disinvesting money. And so you're right, your child shouldn't be stuck somewhere, and I agree with you. Your child shouldn't be stuck somewhere where where your child is not getting everything that they need and where it's even somewhat damaging. The flip side of that is the argument that people will make is if everybody did what you are suggesting, that the public education system might collapse.
And to that, I kind of, it's not a real argument because there are people that are genuinely happy with their public school. And even given the choice, they'll stay there. So, I mean, good. Stay there with your now smaller class sizes, which is always a problem. So I don't know why forcing people to stay where they're at and then cry about how overpopulated it is. But for those of us with the Empowerment Scholarship Account Program in Arizona, we only have access to the state allotted per pupil money, none of the federal money, none of the local money. And we get only 90% of it. We have to spend it, obviously, expressly on our children. And then when we exit the program, whether we choose to exit it or they graduate out, all of that money goes back to the state. Like if there's any money left, because they allow us to roll it over from year to year, which allows parents to budget and save for future expenses. Because, I mean, if you're using private school, tuition gets more expensive as you get older, but your amount isn't increasing. Therapies can get more expensive, things like that. So it allows parents to budget and save. I'm able to shop. Like if I need a certain curriculum, like I can look at a couple different places and save some money here and there. It's not just, the schools just, they spend. I try not to as much. Like I am very deliberate, and the ESA moms that I know are very deliberate about what we are spending our children's education funds on and what we're planning to spend it on in the future. And I know that I will have money left over to send back to the state of Arizona when my child is done. Whereas, I mean, I don't think, if she were in the public system, they're not giving rebates back to the state.
No, they are not giving rebates back to the state.
They're not giving rebates back to the state.
That's unheard of. I think that might be against the law, actually.
Right. So, it's just the money issue it's not a real issue.
One of the issues that folks will bring up, besides the money, because the money is very important in everything having to do with education. I think everybody should just admit that money matters. Yeah. And where it goes, the reason we're having fights is because of where it goes, who gets it. And if you don't get it, then you want to fight to get it. But your story actually discounts some other parts of the narrative too, which is that, school choices for people who have kids that are, the high performing kids who are stellar, who have no additional needs, who have no special education needs, like it's just to get kids out of schools where there are kids that have special education needs, for instance. Yeah. What do you do when you encounter that argument that it increases segregation, it leaves behind kids that have much higher needs, much greater needs? And takes away the kids that are like what they call cherry picking, which I think is a terrible term, because it's like, you're saying that all the good kids leave is basically what people are saying. And, oh my God, we're left with the others. But that doesn't really seem to fit with my scenario. No. And it sounds like yours either.
No. I think it's highly disingenuous, especially with programs like the ESA program in Arizona. Some of the families that I know personally have kids with super severe needs. And one of them that was actually has been in the program since its inception and helped get it passed. Her son has severe autism and issues, and the school, when he was in the public school, the atrocious actions that they went to not give him services, forging signatures and telling her that they were doing her a favor because he couldn't learn anyways, and he was just going to end up like institutionalized, and excuse me, just horrible things, that the lengths they went to not educate him. And then she was able to get him into this program, and he has done so well, and he has grown and learned so much more than he could have in that system. I have another friend whose daughter has cerebral palsy, very severely. And when she was in the public system, she was just sat in the room pretty much all day, and they wouldn't let her outside therapists from DDD come in to the school and work with her. When you have a child that has severe disabilities like that, you get state assistance from the Department of Developmental Disabilities and things like that, and you get a certain number of hours for therapy, and they wouldn't allow these therapists to come into the school and work with this child there in the school. She took her out. She has her on ESA, and she has all of the services and stuff that she needs there in their home. And, just these kids that would have just faded into the background and been forgotten by the system. And the only reason that they haven't is because of this program, is because their parents have been able to access their money and use it on them, that their money doesn't get rolled into the general fund for every other kid, that the money is used on them, and it's their entitlement, and it should be used on them.
Listening for the argument that people would make against it, it's why wouldn't you just actually put more effort into making the schools good and open for all? Like strengthen the existing district schools and a district school system by making sure that they have everything that they need to serve the needs of all different kinds of kids, so that you don't have to have necessarily choice. So that the district school, the neighborhood school, the district school, all of them just have everything that you need. Why not fight for that rather than to give people the ability to escape and go different directions?
I think absolutely we need to work on improving the schools that are there. But I don't think we do that by bloating them with a bunch of kids that shouldn't be there, that don't want to be there. I think if we allow, families to freely move and access opportunities that they deem the best for their child, whether that's schooling them at home, private instruction, going to a private school, going to a micro school, a charter school, whatever that may be, allowing people to freely choose and access those options, frees up the spaces. We won't have so many overpopulated classrooms because people feel stuck, like they can only go there because they can't afford any other option. Mm-hmm. We can start cutting out, the administrative bloat and work to get the dollars actually into the classroom. We can, help if the school wants to access more students, make them compete for those students. Like, what do you have to offer? Like, what programs do you have to offer me? What curriculum do you have to offer me for me to send my child there? Right now, there's none.
In Arizona, how have you seen that work? Because Arizona is one of the more mature choice markets in the United States. And it seems like it's not just for one group of people, it's for everybody. Like many places in the country, the school choices, if you have dyslexia, or if you're low income, or if you've been in a low performing school for 3 years, there are all these rules that make it just for certain groups. Arizona, you guys are like, no, like school choice is a thing for everybody.
We're trying.
It's like if I were to come through there just to visit, y'all would hand me a school choice certificate when I got there at the airport. So how's that working out in terms of, is it peaceful? Is it stable? Do people love it? Do is it working for kids?
There's the ESA program right now is like 1% of the education budget in Arizona, and just under 1% of all of the public education of all of the kids. All the kids that are enrolled make up about 1%. But and charters are technically public schools.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's a choice system, though, right? They're like part of a choice system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you can attend, we have open enrollment. So if you can get there, you can go there unless the school says no, which, public schools can say no, especially to SPED kids, They can, they will tell you, oh, well, we're going to move his placement to this school this year because they have this service, and you don't really have a choice. Like if you want your kid to get that service, you have to send them to that school. But one in five Arizona students go to a charter school through the state. There are certain areas where it's more higher percentage than that, but about 20% use charter as an option. We do have like an anti-school choice lobby group. And they're
But that's such a
very
strange thing to do
vocal,
with your life. I don't get
right?
it, Kayla. I don't get it. Like, to devote your life to saying, like, I get devoting your life to fighting for people to be able to vote, for people to be able to have equal accommodations in a hotel. I don't get fighting against people being able to vote or to have something that they want.
Yeah.
Like, to wake up every morning like Eveline thinking like, whose life can I destroy today? Right? Like, I do not get it. And if I were you, I don't know that I could keep doing it forever without snapping on somebody. You seem like they have just the best disposition about these things. Oh, do you snap?
We've had some snaps.
Really?
Yes,
Really?
there have been some back and forths between ESA moms and they're called Save Our Schools Arizona,
Oh,
SOS.
Jesus.
Which
Oh, my
I will
God.
note, SOS is Save Our Schools, not Save
Not
Our
a-
Students.
Absolutely.
I mean, but yeah,
Absolutely.
no, we have gone back and forth there. They are led by an associate professor at ASU who is a doctor in rhetoric. I don't know what school is giving out doctorates in rhetoric, but they should stop. That shouldn't be a thing. She's literally a spin doctor. And a fifth grade teacher and
Bless your heart.
another woman who sends her children to charter schools, which were like, because they'll rail against charter schools too, but then they use the charter school attendance in their thing where they're like, oh, 95% of Arizonans choose public schools. Well, first of all, you're using charters in that number, and
Well, they'll
you
count
will
charters as public when it makes
when they
sense.
want to.
Yeah, when they want to. And then they'll exclude charters when they want to. Again, though, this is hitting on the theme of this. You're just mentioning somebody who dedicates their time to stopping other people from having choice, who
Yeah.
has a kid in a charter school.
Exactly.
Right. When I followed the NAACP nationally, when they were having their anti-charter school hearings in different cities, it just came out that like one of them worked in a charter school, multiples of them on their board had children or grandchildren in charter schools while they're traveling the country talking about how terrible charter schools are. Right.
Yeah.
And I just actually think there should be some sort of hypocrisy penalty for that. Like,
Yeah.
somebody should tell you, get your bedazzled hat off of this stage right now and walk your ass to the penalty box, and don't come out of there until you take that child out of a private school, or you take your child out of and put them in the worst performing school in your city. Then
or
we can
even
have
just your assigned school. These other moms don't even have their kid in the assigned public schools.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, they're in a public school, but it's not the one they're assigned to.
Right.
So
Why? I mean, do they ever answer that?
no,
does anyone ever
they
call
block
that?
us.
They block you.
And for a while we were like, they doxed us, then they blocked us because
Mm-hmm.
they will not interact with us in any way.
Not in a fair way. And you know what? Just like this exchange that started this conversation that has you here in the first place, they will marginalize you to the extent that they can. And then when they can't do it anymore, then they will just block you.
They'll just block you.
But they don't want to have an honest exchange.
No. Andre and Julian both still have me blocked.
Oh my God. Do you know how long ago I was blocked? I had to go in on my second account just to see what was going on with y'all, because Andre blocked me years ago when I cut off a contract to him. And, we used to have constant conversations about this. He used to say to me straight up, I used to say, Andre, you have a child in a private school. How can you be out here saying that the choice program is bad for parents? He literally said to me, and I am, listen, all shade. I hate when people say no shade. All shade and all tea spilled. Said to me point blank, but I'm educated. Like, I will pick a good school for my kid. But when we give this right to too many people who aren't educated, they choose schools that are really just not good for them and not good for their kids and their communities. And that's not something I would do. And it was astounding to me that a Black man would let it come out of his mouth that Black women couldn't be trusted to pick schools like he could because he has a PhD, right? Yeah. Said the same thing with Julian. Julian, I would say to him, who was arguing with you, say, Julian, your dad is a very smart man. He's a professor. He's a Black professor. And when it came time to put you in school, He put you in a private school because he's a smart man. For some reason, he wanted an outcome. And Julian's response was, yeah, he just, my parents wanted me to go to a Jesus school. They wanted me to know Jesus. And I don't think that the public should have to pay for that. And I'm like thinking, well, damn, if Jesus is the salvation of all the world and everybody, you don't want people to know Jesus because you don't think that think that only the people with means should be able to have their kids come to Jesus. Yeah. Help me, Kayla. Help me. I do not understand it.
No.
It makes no sense. I want to show people
no sense.
This exchange and how it started and where it came from so that people know that I'm not just like making stuff up. You're not making stuff up. This was like a real deal. So here's the screen. Let me see if I can find that's not it. Hold on one second. I'll find it. That started it all. Our joint friend, Jason Bedrick, I think is kind of the one who started it all. Jason likes to post stuff about school choice all the time. And look how long this thread is. This is the thread. You all had an epic battle.
It's
all
still
white
going.
People, for three people of color, 3 black folks, you and 2 anti-choice Negroes on here on this thread, and everybody else is white, arguing about like what's best for us. And what's really interesting and ironic is it started with a Jewish man, a white guy, pointing out that, listen, by data, people of color are amongst, here we go, right here, people of color are amongst the most supportive of school choice, right? This isn't this isn't a drill. This is the real thing here. The least supportive are unionized teachers. The most supportive are black folks and brown folks, and oddly, as it's told, lesser educated white folks see school choice as like a better deal for them. So he puts this out there, and then Andre Perry. Here comes Andre. Andre says, "This is not the day for white men to tell people of color what's good for them or what to do. Stand down. Juneteenth, 2020. Woo! Afrocentricity."
Yeah.
Except for not. Okay, so this is not the day for white men to tell people of color what's good for them or not. Stand down. So what Jason had said, Jason's, and I want to be real here, Jason's Semitic. So I don't know if people know what that means, but it doesn't necessarily equate to white man. But anyways, Jason says, here's data. And Andre Perry has a doctorate, so it's supposed to understand data. But his response is this weird Afro-plastic, easily breakable response of, "You're white, don't say it," right? Yeah.
Your data isn't valid because you brought it to me as a white person.
As a white person, which means like, if you, as a white person, if you said to me 2 + 2 is 4,
nope, you're wrong. You're white. No.
Because in Negro math, it could be 7, it could be 12, like it could be 8. It could be whatever we want it to be, except for when I'm counting my money, because then it's all going to add up the right way. So Jason says, I quoted a poll, asked of people of color, what they thought. And these are the results. So then Julian jumps in. You don't see it, do you? Even on Juneteenth, it is, you don't see it that you're white, and I'm blackish. And I don't even have to, I have a doctorate. I took 9 statistics classes at Stanford, which is what Julian always tells you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Tells you that often, but you just don't see it, do you? Jason's like, God damn it, this is ridiculous. This is such an epic kind of just like cluster. Really, it comes down to, here comes Andre again. Whiteness gets in the way of any legitimate ed reform movement. The challenges for Bob Bowden, who's another person who was in the list, is that he needs to listen to black voices that don't represent his own worldview.
And I'm like, that's what I've been doing, and you've been ignoring me. Like I've been over here, and you're ignoring me because I don't represent your worldview. But that was a dig at me, because he's weird. Like, well, clearly you're only listening to her because she agrees with you. And
we don't have to respond to her because we're black men. She's a black woman who has
I don't have a PhD.
And doesn't have a PhD, who just wants, who honestly, let's get into the misogynoir here, who, like he was saying, what he said to me privately years ago, is these women are not making good educated decisions when we give them a choice. And in this conversation, it's like, good, smart men are having a conversation here, honey, don't jump in, right? There's a real weird element here of, because what I think is, at the moment that you enter the fray, you, Julian, and him should ignore everybody else and have a conversation at that moment of like, okay, now we can't pull the, you're only saying this because you're racist thing now and you're white, because we're not. So, well,
and I ended up making like a graphic about it. I was like, when a Black woman says, I want school choice options for my kids, the answer is not, no, that's racist. Because that's what they were saying. Like, that's basically what they were saying, is that, no, choice in education is a racist idea. And if you want that, you must be racist. It's news to me. Like, and the whole Juneteenth thing, I never got around to it, but I wanted to be like, okay, well, on Juneteenth, shouldn't we be talking about emancipating Black kids from the public system that was designed to keep them like, you know, it was designed to keep them separate. It was designed to keep them uneducated and to prevent upward economic growth, which we see. We see that as truth, that poor education lends to poor job outcomes, not being able to move out of the system where you're in, not getting into college, not owning a home, all this stuff. And it starts with education. So if we are in this system that was designed and is built on the foundations that keep brown and Black people where they are, why are we defending that system? You want to talk about Juneteenth, Emancipation Day? Well, I want to emancipate kids from crap schools. So,
I mean, like, listen, you're hitting on the thing that has me so troubled by the Afroplastics, which is just, they will use things like Juneteenth, or like Julian has written things incorporating Malcolm X. Like they grab for anything that gives them Negro strength. Like, you know, like they try and melanate their bad arguments in ways that make no sense. But Malcolm X never said, trap your Black kids in white schools with white teachers and make sure they have no avenues out. So why would you include him in some study or something that you write saying that Black folks should not have any choice, right? Yeah. Why would you say on Juneteenth, the day when Black folks were emancipated, what you just said? Like, why would he argue against, like, Juneteenth was about being emancipated from slavery, from freedom to freedom. Why would you say?
Why can't we have freedom?
Great point.
Why can't we have freedom?
Yeah. Why do we need freedom in everything but schools where we put our child's mind? Like, you have a mind. God gives you a little brain, and he puts a little brain in your hand. And why should you have no choice where you put that? Because it's the most precious thing your family is going to have, right? I am scared to death of my kids not living up to their full potential, and having it be something that I did. You know, something that some opportunity that they didn't have, something that I didn't recognize or whatnot. So that tension of being a parent is real for me, of really waking up every morning thinking through, man, are we getting this right? You know? Yeah. And when people try and step in the way of you having opportunities and choices to fulfill that part of your duties, to me, it's medieval. It's like, really, it requires you to get real nasty. I think you stood your ground here. I put the link to the epic battle. You said it's still going on. Is it?
It's literally still going on? We have some education Ednas that are in there right now.
There's no Black people here though. Like, listen, Aud Hilly is somebody I've argued with. She teaches upstate New York at a school that has no Black kids.
Yeah, I've been calling her the audacious hillbilly because that's all I see when I see her name. Aud Hilly.
See, you did it. You, Kayla, you did that thing. That was savage.
Well, and she's been arguing about not giving choice, whatever. And then me and two other ESA moms with twice exceptional kids that are, you know, very gifted, and we're educated and everything. And we tell her about them. And then all of a sudden she's like, well, I'm glad you were able to get them stuff. And we're like, we want those options for all the parents. She's like, well, you have to understand your child must be really unique if what you said is true. So that I'm like, so the normies and the remedial kids, like, I'm like, isn't this a disparity we're trying to avoid here?
This is what's
like, only choice for super exceptional kids, only choice for rich kids, only. I'm like, man, it should be for all of it.
That's a trick bag, though. That's saying you're somehow special. So I can discount your argument because it's not really for the masses. It's not for everybody.
Yeah. And
But
that's exactly what her argument been.
when you just said to me, she said to you, but you have to understand, that is a terrible way to start a sentence with me. And with you, it sounds like, because you're the wrong one. They didn't pick the wrong one. You got Carol Burris in here, who taught at a school that has almost no Black students, all white, all well-to-do.
She's like, why should I have to pay for your kids' education? I'm like, why should I have to pay for your retirement when you left the economy like this?
She wrote something about my salary. She put something online about my salary. And I went back and looked at her pension, what she's getting paid and what she got paid her last 2 years of being a principal. And she better not talk to anybody about what they earn or whatnot, because she's made a good career of drinking the tears of poor children. And she's still making it. So, but this thread goes on and on and on, and it's all the same people. And you call them educational Ednas. I haven't really heard that before. You know, I had been calling them
like Ed the new Karen.
But the Ed Karens, but these are like Ed Ednas. They are legion. There's a lot of them.
So
it's
many.
like a hobby for them.
So many. And it's such a weird, like you said before, it's such a weird thing to like, I'm going to fight so that you can't do what you want with your kid. Like, what does my kid have to do with you? Well, I pay taxes. Great. I do too.
Okay. So the audacious hillbilly is a pensionista. Carol Burris is a pensionista. They run entire organizations full of pensionistas. Listen, you spent your whole life teaching, then you get your pension. You have more power as a pensionista over the teaching profession than you did when you were teaching, because you still can vote in your union stuff. You still can drive things. So they have a pretty just crude, straight up, vested interest in keeping things the way that they are right now. So us thinking that we're going to get to them through their heart or through their head or whatnot, as if they're not savage about their vested interest or whatnot, is just not going to. And they got time.
Yep.
They got time. They got more time than you do, Kayla.
Oh yeah. Julia tried to ask me about my credentials and my organization's 990s. And I didn't respond to him right away because my kid had a dirty diaper. I'm sorry. I'm actually a mom. I have other things going on. And he very impatient asking me for all these credentials because, like I said at the beginning, I have to prove myself to everyone that opposes me. And I'm like, 1,000 apologies. I'm sorry you can be on Twitter all day long. I actually have kids to take care of.
Actually, and I'm disgusted by that example. I don't think you have to be pulling up anything to prove to anybody anything, especially some Negroes who benefited from school choice, who now sit around talking about how many classes in statistics they took at Stanford as a way of fighting Black people, especially Black women, on behalf of white private school women and moms and pensionistas. They very clearly work for the team that you're talking about, the SOS crowd, that crowd. Mm-hmm. They are not out here working necessarily for Black people or for people of color. And what started this entire thread that you have here is just showing them the data that shows that people of color disagree with them and that Black people disagree with them, and they can't have it. They just can't have it. So I appreciate you. And I'm so glad that you got on with us today to tell the real story, to tell the truth. I'm glad that you're in this thread. I put the thread so our people in the comments can see it and go in, hopefully even just join in and participate, because Black people need to gentrify this Twitter thread, because this Twitter thread is hella white. And nothing against that. Listen, when I say stuff like that, I hope people are not like, oh, Chris hates white people, because Chris is, family is very complicated. So, in that way, so I'm not necessarily out here just saying that. I am saying that this is a hella white thread that you're in, of people having opinions about us without us. And you're the only one in it who's like the warrior. So I appreciate you. Final words for people listening, people watching, especially the ones who want to fight like you fight, the ones who want to stand up and do what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah, I am going to be doing, Empowered Arizona Families is here to stay. We're going to grow. I have aspirations for growing it into empowered American families. my kids and other kids are too important not to fight for it.
Tilly Elrum says, Kayla owned the academics. Keep fighting! Exclamation point. Mom power. Mom power. Hashtag mom power.
That's right.
The entire time that we've been talking, your Twitter handle has been going across the bottom. So if people want to get in touch with Kayla and talk directly about empowered parents, empowered families, all you have to do is go to Twitter, and it's at empowered_AF. Woof. Wait, I didn't even think about that until I put that on there. But no, damn. Okay.
People are still trying to tell me, you know what AF means? I'm like, I mean, yes, I do. It means Arizona families.
It means absolutely forever. Empowered families, absolutely forever. So
I mean, the acronym was going to be FUSOS, but my husband told me that was too on the nose. So
that was very on the nose. I would wear the t-shirt.
I would too.
Yeah, I would wear the t-shirt. Fuss us. That needs to be our new curse word. Fuss us. Be gone, people. Fuss us.
Right.
Anyways, listen. Hey, come back anytime when you have something to add or to say. If you ever write a book, you write an article, you write a column that you want people to know, come back and let us know. I really appreciate you. I'm not just saying that. We have too few people in the fight, and I just respect it. I think I'm where you are in that we have to empower other people, though, to step up and not be afraid. Oh my God, I can't believe, if I'm afraid of being in this room. These people might talk down to me. These people might pull the college, thing on me. They might pull the I've written books thing, whatever. We've got to make this safe for other people to get in and speak their truth. So thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, everybody listening and watching. You know how to get in touch with me. It's Christopher at Citizen Stewart. I'm sorry, Christopher at activist.com, or you can get me on Twitter at Citizen Stewart. Again, on Twitter at Citizen Stewart. That's the best way to reach me. Thank you guys all for supporting and watching us every day.